All right, hello everyone. My name's Amal Graafstra, CEO of Dangerous Things. We're a biohacking company. We make human augmentation non-medical implant devices. The idea here is talking about biohacking. You might not have ever heard the term. Biohacking is kind of a combination of what I call kind of four silos, which is body and mind hacking, which is like meditation, nootropics, some kind of like special dietary approach to maximize performance. Then includes things like 3D bioprinting, where you're actually printing tissues, collagen structures, things like that, where it's kind of a more advanced medical organ and tissue designing. Then another factor is DNA and RNA hacking, which is essentially kind of fiddling with the software code of life itself. And then kind of in the far corner is what I do, which is bionic implants. So bionic is biological and electronic, so it's an implant that's electronic that goes in biology. But you can kind of see that these different things filter down to like the mind hacking things goes to quantified self, life enhancement and extension, singularity, but ultimately it filters back down to transhumanism. Transhumanism is quite simply international movement with the goal of fundamentally transforming the human condition. A lot of people kind of view the human body as this kind of perfect vessel. They might view it as a spiritual vessel, something that's like containing our soul or something. But biohackers view the body as much more Cartesian. We view it more like a sport utility vehicle. So our minds are ourselves, and we use our bodies to explore the world. And like a SUV, our bodies are adaptable and flexible, and also now upgradable. Human beings have been tool users since the beginning. Not much has changed. Our tools have gotten better, but we're still kind of hairless apes. We've always sought to increase our capabilities through tool use. Those tools have taken many forms, and right now wearable tools are very popular. So Fitbits, things like this. The problem is a lot of times they end up in the drawer. They're not utilized heavily, and that's because of something I call the Tamagotchi Effect, which is essentially, I don't know if you remember Tamagotchis or know what Tamagotchis are, but they're these like digital pets, and you had to manage them. So you'd be doing your task or going to school or whatever, and they'd beep, and you have to feed them or take care of them. If you didn't, they died. And so the idea is that it's demanding your attention, and that's kind of what we have today. Is we have all these devices that demand our attention, and there's a cost-benefit analysis you do on that, and oftentimes it's not worth the benefit. But the three things that you need to survive in kind of a modern world today are keys, wallet, and phone, and those things are kind of so critical that we've even made like bath nuts and little doormats to make sure that we remember those things when we go out the door. Anything extemporaneous to that, anything in addition to that, is an additional management burden, and that's where most people fall off. And that's why, like I say, 50% of Fitbits end up in the drawer and not used. So back in 2005, I had an identity problem. So I had an office door that I had to get through, and constantly locked on me. My key ring was quite expansive because I had many doors to go through, and it just didn't work for me. I started wondering why can't the door just know that it's me? I looked at iris, kind of biometrics, like being able to just recognize literally me through iris scanning or fingerprint reading. But back then, and still today, those technologies are kind of clunky. They're expensive, and they're not well suited for outdoors. Biometric systems are also analog in nature. So you leave your identifiers everywhere. Fingerprints are left everywhere. DNA is left everywhere. They're digitized, but they're still analog inputs. And that means that they can be easily captured and spoofed. And so this is a German defense minister who's, through various photographs, hackers were able to collect her iris pattern and fingerprint and regenerate that with spoofs and fakes, and then actually get into secure buildings with that. This is a police department that took a bunch of actual fingerprint records, and they generated a 3D printed fingerprint, and they opened a suspect's phone with that fingerprint data. So, of course, a solution that is robust and cheap and easy to implement is RFID. It's used pretty much everywhere. You know how it works. So I didn't want to replace the keys with cards. That just seemed kind of like upgrading the tech, but not really solving the problem. So I thought about the little chips that pets have been getting for decades, the little implants that they get in their neck. So I actually took a pet injector, removed the pet chip, and then put a different chip with a different data protocol in the injector. And I went to my family doctor, and he did the first installation. And so you'll notice he's not wearing gloves, and that's when I learned that the gloves are there to protect the doctor from you, not the other way around. So today I use them quite regularly. This is me getting to my house. So just unlocks the door, I get in. So I was able to take my keys and replace them with this implant. So I took 1/3 of my management burden on a daily basis and replaced it with something that's completely transparent and has no management. So being able to, reduce this kind of effect of like checking for wallet and phone and keys, it's not just the times where I lost my keys, but in everyday life, the management of it has been reduced significantly. Again, in 2005, there was a lot of kind of hype at the time, so I wrote a book called RFID Toys and was on some magazines things. In the book, it covers how to actually kind of upgrade your life around you. Like, this is a keyboard that I modified. I added a reader there and was able to log in to the computer where I just swiped my hand over it, and it's XP because it's 2005. This is a fire safe that I upgraded with an RFID authentication. My car, I'm able to get into the car with just my implant. And then for a while, things went kind of quiet. There wasn't a lot of activity. It was like the world was over it. But then, like 2008 or 9, the maker revolution really hit, and people started making things again. They started getting involved in hobbyist electronics and trying to build things, and that produced an interest in RFID and implants. And so, because of the coverage before, I started to get a massive amount of emails, and I couldn't really keep up with it, and it just was kind of like, ugh, whatever. And so people kind of started doing things on their own. And if you are squeamish, look away. So people started biohacking things on their own and doing it wrong. So this is kind of the aftermath of one of these kind of home surgeries. This is a person who just decided to just start cutting into their hand to try to install upgrades. People are taking transponders out of car keys that are completely not safe, and it has the toxic epoxies and things, so not cool. So in 2013, I started a company called Dangerous Things, and the idea was that we wanted to solve two problems. We wanted to be able to supply safe materials, so the implants were tested and vetted, and then we also wanted to make sure the installation procedure was safe. So we worked with doctors, but more importantly, we started partnering with body piercers. Which there are plenty of body piercers everywhere, and they don't have any problem sticking weird things into bodies. So, but they are licensed and bonded, and they're familiar with aseptic procedure. They're working out of licensed studios, so and they're very familiar with needles and skin. So it was a really, really good partnership. Our first series of products are X series, which is this, the glass tube form factor, which is 2 millimeters by 12 millimeters. It's just installed in the hand. So we initially started by sourcing, and this is a cytotoxicity test batch. So we did that testing on the materials. Then we did some crush testing. We took one of the chips and put it between two pieces of silicone of different durometers to simulate human tissue. We smashed it, and the cylinder survived, but the silicone got deformed. So then we moved to real tissue. So we took raw chicken and put a bunch of implants everywhere, and then crushed it. And didn't turn out too well for the chicken, but every one of the implants survived, and so we were getting really good test data. And then we threw it into a vacuum chamber system that has. This is a really kind of a vacuum tree that's used in labs, and it's able to go to more of a vacuum than deep space. Like there's less atoms of anything in there than in even deep space, where there's like hydrogen and stuff whizzing around. We threw it into liquid nitrogen vat and pulled it out and read it. So we did a plethora of tests, and we kind of fulfilled our first goal, which is to ensure that the things that we were selling was safe. Then we started building our partner network, which is now kind of hundreds kind of scattered all around. This is one of our partners out of the Netherlands. He's doing an installation. It's quite interesting. Then we decided to actually start manufacturing our own tags that just didn't exist from a sourcing perspective. So we went on Indiegogo and did a crowdfunding campaign for the world's only NFC compliant implant. So it works with NFC devices like phones. That's the end result. So we have an injector assembly. The chip is inside the injector assembly, and the final kit, full kit, is this right here. So the injector assembly is here, and the rest of the kit has everything that you need to do an installation. The cool thing about NFC is it has all these applications that are associated with it. So not just access control, not just getting in your house or in your car or logging in your computer, but we're exploring applications like mobile payments, loyalty programs, social networking, like information exchange. Like my implant has my business card on it, so if you scan it with your NFC phone, my contact details go into your phone. So a lot of interesting people started taking notice, and so this is Peter Diamandis. He's kind of he's running the X Prize program, and he's giving a talk on stage. And while he's giving a talk, he's getting an installation done. So it's quite interesting. People in the Bitcoin community started looking at this as a potential option for securing Bitcoin payments. They built a custom terminal, and then ended up using it here, presenting his implant, and it's giving him his Bitcoin balance. Another person who's familiar with SAS Airlines was able to work with them, and he created an elite passenger program where he was able to move his credentials onto his implant, and he just presents it to be able to go through the boarding procedure into the VIP lounge. Kaspersky Labs, they did a whole thing where they did a bunch of installations, then they did some evaluations on security, and of course NFC implants or tags in general, they're not really meant to be secure, they're meant to be open, they're meant to communicate data. So when we started thinking about more advanced applications, we started looking at different security models. And so security is interesting from the perspective that it requires a lot of computing power. So computer power needs real, actual electron power. And how these things work is that you have your reader, right, and it generates a magnetic field, and then you have your tag, so a card or whatever, and when you bring that within the magnetic field, it inducts power and then communicates over that field. So these devices are passive, they have no battery. So the problem is that most of the reader antennas are these flat plane coil PCB trace antennas, and it's the same thing in your cards or other types of tags that you might encounter. But the implants are cylindrical. They have a cylindrical shape to them, so the magnetic fields don't couple well. So performance is an issue with the implants. They do work, but you kind of have to maybe find the sweet spot, and maybe some reader designs don't work well. So we started looking at off-the-shelf devices. So this is an inlay. It's called a wet inlay because I had an adhesive on the back, and you can just buy them for a couple bucks. And so we started looking at different polymer ideas to be able to take that off-the-shelf design and make it biosafe. And so we actually put that, we did a coding project, put it in my finger here in my right hand, and after a few months it ended up failing. So we took it out, checked out what the problem was, and after a long stint of more research and development, we ended up with something like this. This is next generation flexible biopolymer implant, and the idea is I want to put it in my left hand, kind of in this area, so I could fist bump readers and get good performance. And that's it just after installation, and now it's working great today. So but the thing is, I wanted to start addressing problems that were bigger than just being able to not get rid of my keys, right? If you think about keys, every key in your keychain and every card in your wallet is an identifier. It's a token that identifies you to some system. And so we start talking about identity. The ability to secure identity is interesting. So you're looking at like just authentication, like logging in. Passwords are ridiculous, and so people are suggesting using password managers and making your passwords long and complex, but that really doesn't solve the problem because your passwords are still hashed and then stored on remote servers, which are vulnerable to attack, and then rainbow tables can be used or other brute force methods to derive your passwords. So passwords are just not ideal. In fact, this is just a simple password recovery program that you can run on any server, Windows server. It'll just start pulling passwords out of the thing, out of the system. So you're not supposed to be able to do that, but it's very, very straightforward. So the other thing about biometrics, as we've seen, is that they're analog. So regardless of what you're typing on a keyboard or submitting via biometric scanner, those are all analog. Your body's analog. It's not a secure token. So if we want to look at how to solve this problem, we want to look at public key encryption. And who knows about public key encryption? Yeah. Who doesn't? Who needs a quick primer? So public key encryption is awesome because when you're a kid and you're like, I'm gonna take a password and I'll give you the password, and then we're gonna have a message and I'm gonna encrypt the message, send it to you, and then you can use that same password to decrypt it and get the message. That's a symmetric model. So we share a password, and that password's used to encrypt something and then also decrypt it. So that's the standard thought on how I'm going to send a secret message. But the problem is that how do you communicate that password securely to somebody, particularly somebody you've never met before, you just met? So in a digital sense, like how do you ensure that you can secure your communications if you're going to a new website and there's somebody listening, right? So public key encryption is very cool because it allows you to take that concept and split keys out. So there's a public and a private key pair, and what's awesome about them is the public and the private key are one way. So anything you encrypt with the public key, you can only decrypt with the private key, and vice versa. You can only if you encrypt something with a private key, you can only decrypt it with the public. So the idea is that on the public side, everybody shares the public identity keys, right? So my key is blah and your key is blah, and so everybody's aware of what the public side is. Then on the private side, if you want to send me a message and make sure I'm the only one that can read it, then you take my public key and encrypt the message and send it to me. And then only my private key, which I'm keeping private, can decrypt it. Anybody else that gets that message, they're not going to be able to decrypt it. Likewise, when you send it, you can actually take the message content, you can hash it down, and then use your private key to sign it, to say, this is me sending it. It's originally, you're validating your identity that way. So you're saying, yes, this is actually a message from me. So when I get the message, I decrypt it, I open it up, I look at the signature, and then I can look at your public key and use that to verify the signature. So if it wasn't actually sent by you, then the signature won't match. What's also cool about the signature is it can verify that the content hasn't been altered or changed. So there's a number of cool features. So when you start talking about using that kind of security model in the real world, you're talking about smart cards. Things like bank cards that you're familiar with, the chip and pin, that's an example of that type of model, where the actual token itself is doing some cryptography. There's other devices. This is a YubiKey. It's a device you can stick in your computer in the USB port or use it via NFC and be able to actually do cryptography. So these things have been around for a while, but the problem is that to be able to actually replace something like a wallet, when you build your life around a crypto token like that, and then if you lose that crypto token, it's real bad news. And so the idea of loss and or theft even is limiting what we can actually do in setting up these cryptography systems. And so I came across this company called Desmo, and they make this card. It's just a contactless card, and they open it up on a framework, and they've allowed all of these different applications to be deployed on it. And you can actually write your own applications as well and deploy them through the Desmo platform to the card. So, and just 3 days ago, the Dutch or the German banking and not banking, but the trains and transit systems, they agreed to deploy ticketing through the card. So, if you have one of these cards, you can set up your account and purchase your tickets and keep the ticket on the card and present it to the train guy or whatever. So I said, that's really cool. I want that in my hand. So I was able to work with the company and work with some chip suppliers, and we created Pukey, which is an NFC platform for security payment and cryptography applications. This is a demo of me using it with a TwoFactor. So TwoFactor being, go to a website, enter my username and password. It wants to present a challenge. I have to use a security token to generate a small code that's time sensitive. So this is LastPass. It's a common password manager. And so I've entered my username and password, and now it wants the token, which I'm generating with the implant. So the actual implant has the generated, the crypto is done here. The phone is just like a display. And so pops out the code, put it in there, I'm able to authenticate. So now we're talking about doing real actual decryption. I have an encrypted file on my phone, and I'm using Open Keychain. And I'm using the PGP encryption application on the implant to actually do a decryption on the file. So you can see it's been decrypted, signed by the key, and there's the text. The text has been decrypted by Yuki, dangerous things. So at the moment, we're working pretty hard with a bunch of different application providers. You can see MasterCard there. We're trying to get a payment application that's on that coexists with all the other types of applications. Ubico, EID is interesting because it's the European Electronic ID initiative to be able to ensure that identities across borders work. So we're looking at potential applications there for like national ID, transit, passports, being able to actually travel and authenticate yourself. So that is it. Are there any questions?
Yeah, considering that every device we get, and at some point of time there is another update device coming. So
Yep.
imagine you got the chip injected, and then after like 2 years.
Sure. So obsolescence, right?
Yeah.
Obsolescence is interesting, and how we deal with that is twofold. So one of the things that I like to say is that technology moves fast, but people and standards move slow, applications move slow. And that's true particularly in the RFID space or this area. So this chip I got in 2005. It's been here 11 years. At the time, the chip was 2 decades old. But still today, there's new readers being manufactured I could buy that'll read it, and it works fine. So the issue is that the standard has a long life. Just like you can buy a new phone that has Bluetooth and use a headset from 20 years ago. It works because Bluetooth standard is standard, and it's going to remain standard for a long time until it's usurped. So the tie-in with standards automatically gives it a long life. The other thing is that with the platform, the Pukey platform, it's software upgradable over the air. So let's say you're using a crypto system that has a elliptic curve that becomes out of date, or somebody wants to use a different curve or something. You just update the software, put on the implant. So NFC as a standard is going to be around for a very long time. ISO 14443A is going to be around for a long time. So there's potential for obsolescence, yes, but I think the fact that you can do a software update, and at the end of the day, if you did need to have it removed and replaced, we actually designed those tags to be removable and replaceable. So if you needed to, you could. The doctor could just do a simple procedure, take it out, put a new one in. But so far, that hasn't been a requirement. So.
If I implant your chip today, which are the applications which I can use in Europe, for example?
Well, the chip that I have here is our XNT, which is NFC compliant. Mm-hmm. And essentially that automatically lets you use it with NFC applications on your phone. But the application I find most compelling is access control. So being able to actually get a door lock, put it in my door, and then be able to use it without keys. That's the whole reason that I got the first implant in the first place, and it's the thing I use the most. So there are locks, many different kinds of locks, depending on your door frame, that it'll work with. I'm not sure what the system here uses, but potential that you could register it with the system and use it here. So it comes down to being able to, like my car, for example, you have to know a little bit about electronics and hacking it to make it work. But if you have that skill or know people who do, then you can kind of modify your world to suit the implant. If you're working on kind of like off-the-shelf solutions, it can be a bit limiting, but yeah.
But what about the payments? Like, let's say I go to a grocery store and I want to buy something, and they also have this NFC there as well. And so will it work over there? Like you need MasterCard and Visa card and all those things.
So right, exactly. So there's a huge gap between the hardware being able to do it and the applications being set up to do it. Right. So like the Pukey device, that will totally work. Like I can present it to a payment application terminal right now, but it'll just say, there's no card, right? So, yeah, we're there, but now we need to actually set up the agreements and allow you to be able to go to your bank or load your banking application and then program it with personalization data. But that's not here yet. So.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about security. So, for example, with like credit cards, there are some terminals when you pass it, they like can clone the card. Is this also a possibility that someone scans your hand and is able to then clone your identity?
Sure, potentially. So it depends on what we're talking about and what the scenario is. So like the credit card skimming, right? That's on the magnetic stripe thing. That's why people are getting rid of it, right? It's a very low security, low tech kind of solution. For standard NFC or RFID tags, copying or cloning or emulating more accurately is a possibility, but when you're talking about the Pukey platform with cryptography, that's totally different. So on the crypto platform, no. On kind of the more traditional RFID transponders, yes, but there's a caveat there, and that is that when we're talking about applications, for these things, they're going to be personal use context. So your house, your door, your car. When you're talking about attack vectors, normally attackers go after random clusters of people in crowded environments. And they're going after something that is going to be a third party or business context. So payment cards, for example. In that scenario, I don't need to know my victim. I can just scan cards and then go spend money. But in the scenario of getting something information out of this for a person use context, an attacker would get a number and they would have no context for its use. So unless somebody knows you specifically and wants to attack you specifically and get into your specific house, it's not really a security risk. However, if they wanted to get into your house specifically, they could just use another method, break a window or do that kind of thing. My car that I got into was broken into 5 times. Every time they broke the window, and by the 5th time, I'm like, just take my implant, like just do that. That'd save me the cost of the window, right? So it is a potential risk, but the risk is mitigated by the fact that you retain these applications in a personal use context, and it's minimal.
What's the spec of the newest chips you got? Like,
So the newest one is the Pukey platform, and that's the crypto platform. It's based on NXP Smart MX card. So that is a full Java card platform. It's got they have their Fame MX like crypto and JCOP environment. Then it runs. I think there's like 140K for application space. Yeah, so it's an interesting platform. We're not even out in beta yet, so it's coming though.
Any more questions? Okay, we'll continue over our evening pizza. So a big hand to Amal Graafstra, and thank you for